Hello everyone, welcome once again to Bookswalebhaiya. Today I'll talk about an entirely different genre of book. It's International Geo-Politics. Before I start talking about the book, I would like to ask a few questions. Do you really like to know how the world actually works and who actually runs the world? Do you want to know how those countries who dominate this world at a global level, how exactly do they do it? A hint, the answer lies not exactly in their economic or military might, it's something else. Well, if these questions fascinate you, then let me introduce you to this book, The Ultimate Goal. It's authored by Shri Vikram Sood, who is the former head of R&AW, commonly known as RAW, India's external intelligence agency. This book is indeed one of the best I've read on international geopolitics, as it opens many facets about international geopolitics which many of us might be unaware of. We all know that countries, especially in the West, they dominate the world, but how do they actually do that? Vikram Sood argues in this book that the reason behind the success of these countries is based on their ability to build narratives. To build those narratives, those stories, and be able to propagate them at the global level or to their targeted audience. They build narratives, they justify their actions, their wrongdoings, and accuse others of violating, let's say, certain rules, human rights conditions, and all that. He argues that those countries which cry foul over human rights violations or other such issues about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, press freedom in other countries themselves do not have an excellent record when it comes to these parameters. He says, however, these countries in one way go scot-free because they hold the ability to build those narratives and to propagate those. And how do they do that? Well, they control the mass media, universities, think tanks, and other such institutions wherein they sell their ideas in a manner that others are convinced that yes, this is true. He gives an example of United States war against Iraq, which was propagated as a war against a dictatorial regime which held weapons of mass destruction. They built this propaganda through mass media, through publications, through books, and practically the whole world was somewhat convinced that America is waging a very just war, which in reality it was not. There were no weapons of mass destruction. The real purpose was actually to look for oil reserves. However, there was a time when all of us believed that this was a very fair war fought for a noble or a good cause. He cites several other examples in the book which propagate, which indicate how these global powers, they influence academia, universities, and make people believe that what they are doing is right and well, what others doing are actually wrong. He highlights one very important aspect of which occurred mostly in the past 100 years or so is the increasing influence of corporates in determining the political scenario. He says many of the political decisions are taken actually to satisfy the corporate's interest. One good example for Indians is actually the British imperialism, which was being done to satisfy their corporate interest, which was being done to fulfill their demands of various raw materials and all. However, he mentioned that such kind of practices are being done even today. Even after the World War, several countries' borders were redrawn, and there were, in many Middle Eastern countries, for example, a lot of regime changes took place. However, several regime changes took place in connivance with these global powers just to satisfy their economic interest, prominent among them being oil. He goes on and gives various examples of several countries who indicated how by influencing media, how by establishing people who speak for them, they help build this narrative. One very important point he mentions is that a narrative need not be true. It could be half lie or it could be a complete lie, but it needs to be told first and in an influencing manner. And if you do that well, everything can be justified, and sadly this is what global powers do. He mentions about India and says that for India to rise as a global power, it's very important that Indians start writing their narratives on their own and let no other country dominate its narrative. It has to be Indian narrative, has to be told by Indians in a manner which suits the interest of India at a national as well as global stage. I would say anyone interested in not just international geopolitics, but if anyone is interested in actually knowing how the world works and what India should do in this scenario, they must read this book. It's an extremely well researched book I'm sure anyone with even a small interest in global affairs or national affairs would definitely love it. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my video for more updates. Thank you.